Welcome to the Deep Dive, your shortcut to being truly well-informed. Today, we're taking a fascinating plunge into the world of artificial intelligence, specifically a new advancement called GLM-4.1V-Thinking.
Hmm.
Our mission in this deep dive is to explore how this new vision language model pushes the boundaries of general-purpose, multimodal understanding and reasoning. We'll uncover what makes it unique and how it performs against some of the most powerful AI systems out there.
Yeah, and what's really remarkable about GLM 4.1V thinking is its core design, focusing on deep reasoning across both visual and linguistic information.
Right.
The research highlights a surprising finding. It achieves state-of-the-art performance among models of comparable size. We're talking models under 10 billion parameters.
Which is relatively small these days.
It is, and even more impressively, it can outperform much larger models, including closed-source systems like GPT-4o, on a range of very challenging tasks. This represents, well, a significant leap in efficiency and capability.
That sounds incredibly promising, especially that focus on advanced reasoning. Now, for our listeners who might know AI generally, but maybe not the specifics of vision language models, what exactly is a VLM at its core? And why is this leap to advanced reasoning so crucial right now?
Sure, so at its heart, a vision language model, or VLM, is an AI that can understand and process information from both images and text simultaneously, making connections between them.
So it sees and reads.
Kind of, yeah.
Yeah.
Think of it as an AI that can not only see, but also read, and then, make sense of how those two types of information relate. The shift to advanced reasoning is critical because it moves way beyond just simple visual identification or like captioning an image.
Okay.
Now, the demand is on complex problem solving. This means a model needs to analyze visual input, interpret its context, pull out relevant info, and then use that to solve, say, a scientific problem, or follow instructions in a software interface, or even understand a complex chart. It's really about thinking through a problem step by step, not just recognizing a pattern.
Got it. So it's about seeing the whole picture and then being able to, well, think about it logically. That's the key capability. Now, let's talk architecture. The paper mentions a VIT encoder, an MLP projector, and a large language model as the decoder. How do these pieces work together, especially to handle images and videos at their native resolutions? Features like 2D ROP and time index tokens sound important here.
They are. The architecture is quite elegant, actually. The VIT encoder is essentially the eyes of the model, processing the images and videos.
Right.
Those visual features then pass through an MLP projector. You can think of this as a translator, basically aligning the visual information into a format, into tokens, that the large language model, the brain, or language decoder can understand.
Okay.
Now, handling images of any shape or size, like panoramas or tall documents, that's where 2D ROP comes in. It's a clever way to help the model understand spatial relationships within an image, no matter the dimensions, without distorting the input.
What it was a problem before.
Yeah, older models often struggled with varied or very high-res images. So this is fundamental. And for videos, they use 3D convolutions for temporal downsampling, helps manage the data load. But what's really key are the time index tokens inserted after each frame token.
Time index tokens.
Yeah, think of them as giving the model a real sense of flow and sequence, not just separate snapshots. They explicitly encode the timestamp and the time gaps between frames. Before, understanding movement was often more of a statistical guess. Now it's explicitly encoded, which significantly boosts temporal understanding, crucial for actually seeing a video and understanding actions.
Okay, so that blueprint is impressive. But the design is one thing, making it learn to reason is another. The paper talks about a reasoning-centric training framework with 3 phases. Let's dig into that, starting with pre-training. Sounds like the foundation.
Absolutely. The pre-training phase is all about building this incredibly broad and deep foundation of general multimodal capabilities. And it starts with just a massive, diverse data corpus.
How massive are we talking?
We're talking billions of image-text pairs from the web. Large, self-curated academic corpora with interleaved images and text, huge amounts of OCR data, synthetic text, natural scenes, academic docs, plus hybrid grounding, data image annotations, GUI question-answer pairs, and high-quality video text data. It's enormous.
Wow. That is an enormous amount. But just having lots of data isn't enough, right? How do they ensure it's actually good data? Quality control must be key.
Precisely. Quantity isn't everything.
Yeah.
They use rigorous multi-stage refinement processes. Think of it like a series of really smart filters.
Okay.
So heuristic filtering nixes low-quality stuff. Relevance filtering uses things like seal-up score to make sure the image and text actually match up semantically. Then there's concept-balanced resampling.
What does that do?
That prevents the model from just learning common things and ignoring rarer concepts,
Yeah.
tackling the long-tail distribution problem. And they use factual-centered recaptioning to clean up and enrich captions, making them more precise while sticking to the facts.
Interesting.
And for specialized data, like interleaved image text, they have specific pipelines. For web data, they filter out ads, irrelevant images, and use a classifier to prioritize things like academic charts, scientific illustration stuff with high knowledge density.
Right.
For academic books, they process millions of digitized STEM books to extract high-quality interleaved content. And then, to make it versatile across tasks, visual perception, reasoning coding for GeoAgents, they created a special instruction tuning dataset. 50 million samples.
50 million.
Yeah, designing a detailed taxonomy for task coverage, augmenting complex scenarios, careful checks to avoid benchmark contamination. And the training itself is two-stage. Initial multimodal pre-training, then long context continual training to handle high-res images and video, really pushing that sequence length.
So pre-training lays down this incredibly rich foundation, this vast general understanding, but that's raw potential. How do they shape that into a model that can really think step by step? That brings us to supervised fine-tuning, or SFT, targeting long chain of thought inference.
Right, SFT is the crucial bridge to the next phase, reinforcement learning. Its main job isn't adding new knowledge, but aligning the model's existing understanding with a more effective, structured thinking and response style, enabling that long chain of thought.
Teaching it how to think aloud, essentially.
Sort of, yeah. Teaching it to break down complex problems into logical steps. They curate a high-quality data set of these long COTI reasoning examples covering verifiable things like STEM problems and non-verifiable tasks like open-ended writing.
And the format matters here.
Critically. For stable and scalable RL later on, they teach a standardized response format. Responses use special tokens. Think for the reasoning steps, answer for the final solution. And for verifiable tasks, the actual answer gets wrapped in begin-off box and end-off box.
Why is that specific formatting so important?
Because it makes extracting the final answer for evaluation during reinforcement learning much, much more reliable and accurate. You need that precision for the reward signal later.
Okay, that makes sense. Structured thinking, structured output. So we have the foundation from pre-training, the refined reasoning style from SFT. Now the final step, reinforcement learning, RL. The paper really emphasizes this as key to unlocking the full potential, but also highlights a lot of challenges in making RL work for such a complex VLM.
Yeah, RL is where they really sharpen the reasoning, but it's tricky. They combine reinforcement learning with verifiable rewards, RLVR, and reinforcement learning with human feedback, RLHF. It starts with carefully picking subtasks and curating high-quality data of the right difficulty. But a huge challenge is the reward system itself.
How so? How do you give effective feedback across so many different kinds of tasks?
That's the core problem. The precision of the rewards is absolutely critical. They found that even a slight weakness in the reward signal for just one capability could actually derail the entire training.
Really? Like one weak link breaks the chain?
Exactly. They gave an example. If the STEM problem verifier was great, but the multi-image QA reward system had a flaw, the model's performance could just collapse everywhere.
Wow, so how did they solve that?
Well, partly by using those special box markers from SFT for rule-based extraction of final answers. Trying to use another LLM to find the answer in the output was too unreliable in this multimodal setting. They also had to actively combat reward hacking.
Reward hacking, like gaming the system.
Pretty much, where the AI finds a shortcut to get a high reward score without actually improving its reasoning or solving the problem correctly, like finding a loophole.
Ah, okay.
So their solution was to develop a comprehensive domain-specific reward system. It has shared verification functions, but also unique modules specifically tailored for tasks like OCR, chart QA, visual grounding, ensuring accuracy and robustness across the board.
Makes sense. Beyond the rewards, what other training tricks or stability improvements did they need?
A key enhancement was reinforcement learning with curriculum sampling, or RLCS.
Curriculum sampling, like adjusting the difficulty.
Exactly. The core idea is to dynamically adjust the difficulty of training samples to match where the model is at in its learning. Like a good teacher, you start easier, then gradually introduce harder stuff.
Right, don't overwhelm it or bore it.
Precisely. RLCS downsamples the trivial stuff and the currently impossible stuff,
Yeah.
and boosts the mid-range examples where the model learns most effectively. Other things help too. Larger batch sizes, dynamic sampling expansion, using a ratio-based EMA to keep things stable during long training runs, and something called force answering.
Force answering.
Yeah, prompting the model to give a final answer even if its thinking process gets cut short, so it still gets some credit, some reward for partial reasoning.
Interesting. And stability. RL can be notoriously unstable.
It can. They found the quality of that initial SFT data was absolutely critical. Poor SFT data could just cause the RL training to collapse later. They also found that removing entropy loss, which usually encourages diverse outputs, actually helped here. It could cause garbled output in VLMs, apparently.
Huh. Counterintuitive.
A bit, yeah. And another big finding for stability was using top peak, a Yule's one, for the rollouts during training. Instead of restricting the vocabulary sampling, using the full vocabulary prevented garbled outputs and kept performance clean, even though it introduced more randomness. It stopped the model underlearning rare but important tokens.
Okay, that's a lot of careful tuning. So after all this complex training, how did GLM-4.1V thinking actually perform? The results sound impressive, especially for its size.
They are quite impressive. The evaluation was really comprehensive. 28 public benchmarks across 8 different categories. Things like general visual question answering, STEM problems, OCR, chart understanding, long documents visual grounding, GUI agents, coding, video,
The word,
a broad sweep.
very broad. And GLM 4.1V-9B thinking achieves state-of-the-art performance among models of comparable size under 10 billion parameters, leading on 23 out of those 28 benchmarks.
23 out of 28. That's dominant in its weight class.
It is. And for comparison, it outperformed the much larger Quen 2.5 VL72B model on 18 benchmarks, including really tough ones like MMStar, MureBench, and Pro Chart Museum. Beating a 72 billion parameter model is significant.
Very. And maybe even more notably, it showed competitive or even better performance compared to closed-source giants like GPT-4o on specific challenging tasks, like MMStar, MureBench, 8i2D, long document understanding, STEM reasoning. It really highlights its efficiency alongside strong capabilities.
That combination of performance and efficiency is definitely compelling. But there was another interesting RL finding. You mentioned cross-domain generalization. Does training on one type of task, say STEM, actually help it do better on something different, like understanding GUIs? Or do they interfere?
That's a really critical question for these multi-talented models, right? And their findings suggest robust mutual facilitation, mostly.
So helping each other out.
Yeah. Training on one domain, like the STEM data, did indeed boost performance in other areas, visual grounding, GI agent stuff, even general VQA tasks. It suggests there are shared underlying skills, like visual understanding and basic reasoning, that get strengthened across the board. And interestingly, when they applied RL only to the GUI agent tasks, they saw improvements across all the evaluated domains.
Just training on GUIs helped everything else.
Seems so. It suggests that mastering GUI tasks intrinsically requires such a comprehensive mix of skills, perception, reasoning, planning, that it transfers really broadly.
Fascinating.
And then the mix-all setting, training jointly across all domains, gave even bigger boosts in STEM, OCR and chart, and general VQA.
Ah.
So there's definitely a powerful synergy happening.
But not everywhere. Was there an exception?
There was. They noted that this mixed domain training didn't actually improve performance on visual grounding or the GUI agent tasks themselves compared to training on those domains alone, which is curious. It suggests maybe those specific, highly interactive domains might need even more targeted multi-domain strategies, or perhaps the current mix wasn't optimal for them. It definitely raises questions for future research.
Absolutely. Well, this deep dive into GLM 4.1V thinking really shows the level of sophisticated engineering going into modern AI. It feels like a remarkable step towards that goal of general-purpose multimodal reasoning.
It definitely shows significant progress. But, the paper is also commendably candid about limitations. The challenge of improving reasoning quality itself, not just getting the right final answer, but ensuring the steps are sound, that remains tough. Current reward models often just check the final answer.
Right, they don't necessarily know how it got there.
Exactly, which could accidentally reinforce flawed logic that just happened to reach the right conclusion sometimes. And ensuring training stability for large-scale RL is still a major hurdle. They noted minor setup changes can still cause variations in reasoning depth or output style. There are deeper optimization challenges there.
Always more work to do. So to wrap up, what's a final provocative thought for our listeners to consider after exploring this model?
Okay, well, as these models get better and better at tackling complex, interconnected tasks using different kinds of data, images, text, video, interaction logs, consider this. How might our whole approach to evaluating their intelligence need to evolve? How do we truly capture not just what they achieve, but how they arrive at their conclusions, especially when their internal thinking process remains largely opaque to us?